On a freezing rainy night, a young man hurried toward his second job. Suddenly he saw an elderly woman, soaked, shivering, and completely lost, standing alone at a bus stop. Knowing he would be late for work, he still crossed the street, wrapped his only coat around her, called for an ambulance, and stayed by her side until help arrived. That small act of kindness cost him the only job he had to support his family. But that very moment became the beginning of a journey that would change his life forever. If you were in his shoes, would you have made the same choice? Subscribe and hype up the comments, because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. Marcus pulled his worn jacket tighter as the November wind cut through the evening air, carrying the sharp scent of motor oil and the cold bite of steady, unforgiving rain. Water pattered against the pavement in rising sheets, soaking into his clothes and dripping from the ends of his sleeves. His hands, stained dark with grease that never quite washed out, fumbled with the stubborn zipper. The shift at Brookside Auto Repair had run over by 20 minutes again. Not that it mattered anymore. This was his final day. Ray, the shop owner, had told him 3 days ago in that gruff, can't-meet-your-eyes way, "Winter's coming, son. Business slows down. Can't keep everyone on payroll." Marcus had been juggling evening shifts at the garage with morning classes at community college for nearly 9 months. The careful balance he'd constructed, work, school, family, sleep, borrowed in stolen hours, was collapsing like a house built on sand. Ray didn't say goodbye when Marcus clocked out. He just handed over a grease-spotted paper bag, the corners already turning translucent from oil and the rain. "Leftover fried chicken from lunch," Ray muttered, finally meeting Marcus's eyes for just a second. "Roads are gonna get bad tonight. You be careful out there." Marcus nodded, his throat too tight to form words. His legs burned from standing on concrete for 6 hours straight, a dull, persistent ache climbing from his ankles to his knees. His right work boot, the same pair he'd worn since junior year of high school, had split along the inner sole about a month back. Now, with every step on the rain-slick pavement, cold water seeped through instantly, soaking his sock before he could brace for it. He'd learned to adjust his gait unconsciously, shifting his weight to the outer edge of his foot, trying to walk in a way that looked natural even though each stride sent twinges of pain up his calf. Marcus was a young black man of 22, lean and tall, with close-cropped hair and the kind of face that looked older than his years, carved by responsibility and worry into something more weathered than it should have been. His hands were large and capable, scarred from engine work and rough labor, the knuckles perpetually cracked from cold and chemicals. His second job started in 45 minutes. Bernie's Diner, 8 blocks through the industrial district that separated the south side from downtown. He'd walked this route so many times his body could navigate every buckled sidewalk, square, and broken curb without conscious thought. But tonight, the rain turned every minute into urgency. His backpack felt impossibly heavy, not from its contents, just 3 textbooks and a water bottle, but from the accumulated weight of exhaustion that had settled deep in his bones like sediment. He crossed Madison Avenue, passing the check-cashing storefront with its barred windows and flickering security light, then the boarded-up thrift store that still smelled of mildew and old fabric even through the rain. The wind picked up, colder now, slicing through the thin denim at his legs. Marcus pressed forward, eyes fixed on the diner's orange neon sign barely visible through the shimmering curtain of rain just past the next intersection. He checked the time on his phone, 6:31. His shift started at 6:45. He wasn't late, not yet. Then something caught his eye. Across the street, near the bus shelter half hidden in shadows, stood an elderly white woman, alone in the increasing rain. She was small and frail, her thin frame draped in a floral housedress now plastered against her body by the downpour. Her arms hung limp at her sides. One of her slippers, the kind with soft soles meant for indoor use, was twisted sideways at an odd angle, as if she'd stepped wrong hours ago and never thought to correct it. Her white cardigan hung open, soaked completely through. Her silver hair, which might once have been carefully styled, now stuck to her pale scalp in wet strands. She was trying slowly and shakily to lower herself onto the metal bench. She didn't make it. Her knees buckled halfway down, and she caught herself against the edge of the seat with a small gasp Marcus could almost hear across the street. She righted herself with visible effort, her thin hand gripping the cold metal like it was the only thing anchoring her to reality. She wasn't calling out, wasn't waving for help, she just looked utterly undone, like something inside had been quietly unraveling for hours and had finally come apart completely. Marcus's steps slowed, his eyes flicked ahead to Bernie's diner, where he could see movement through the steamed windows, Bernie himself probably, wiping down the counter with sharp, efficient movements. He could already hear Bernie's voice in his head, loud and final, "You show up late again, don't bother showing up at all." His hand slipped into his jacket pocket, fingers finding the cheap phone with the screen cracked in a spider web pattern across one corner. He pressed the button. 6:32, 13 minutes until his shift started. Maybe 12 if the traffic light at Harrison stayed red too long. Helping this woman now meant one thing, and one thing only: he would not make it to work on time. Not even close. His fingers tightened around the paper bag. The smell of fried chicken had faded beneath the scent of rain and diesel exhaust from passing trucks. His stomach cramped, not just from hunger, though he was hungry. It was pressure, all of it pressing down like a physical weight on his chest. Rent was due in 6 days. His sister's medication, the prescription for her chronic asthma that kept her breathing steady through the night, was down to the last 4 pills. 4 days of medicine. After that, nothing. His eyes drifted back across the street to the old woman. She tried again to reach for her twisted slipper, her pale hand shaking as it stretched downward. She missed by several inches, her narrow shoulders slumped forward, not dramatically, just that small quiet surrender people make when they realize no one is coming to help. Marcus stood still for one long breath, caught between the diner and the bus shelter, between his paycheck and this stranger soaked to her bones, between survival and conscience. He didn't weigh it anymore, didn't think it through. He stepped off the curb and crossed the street. Rain hammered down harder as Marcus reached the bus shelter. The corrugated metal roof rattled and shook with each gust of wind, water streaming off its rusted edges in steady sheets. His work boots hit a deep puddle at the curb's edge, and icy water flooded through the split sole immediately, shocking his foot with cold. His fingers tightened around the paper bag until the grease-spotted paper crumpled, his knuckles going pale against his dark skin. The rain had shifted from a threat to a presence, no longer something approaching but something inescapable, wrapping around everything like a cold, wet blanket. The elderly woman stood motionless just a few feet away, blinking slowly under the harsh yellow light of the street lamp. Her shoulders trembled in small, uncontrollable jerks. Her eyes, pale blue faded like old denim, were glassy and unfocused, darting between Marcus and the empty street behind him, as if searching for something or someone she couldn't quite remember. Marcus glanced back toward Bernie's diner one last time. Through the rain-streaked window, he could just make out Bernie's bulky silhouette moving behind the counter, probably already checking the clock, already preparing that lecture about responsibility and punctuality he'd delivered twice before. Time was slipping away like water through his fingers, water he could actually feel dripping from his hair down the back of his neck. Marcus exhaled slowly through his nose and stepped closer. "Ma'am," his voice came out gentle but uncertain, softer than he'd intended. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" The woman didn't speak, didn't even seem to register that he'd spoken. She just stood there, blinking at nothing, her thin lips slightly parted. Wherever her mind was, it wasn't here at this bus stop, wasn't in this moment. Marcus crouched down beside her slowly, not wanting to startle her. He brushed rain from his face with his free hand, his fingers already going numb from the cold. He hesitated for just a second, then made a decision. He set the paper bag down on the dry concrete beneath the bench and shrugged off his jacket, his only decent coat, the one his grandmother had bought him for his high school graduation 4 years ago. The lining was torn in 2 places and the zipper stuck halfway, but it was warm and it was his. He stood and draped it carefully over the woman's narrow shoulders like a blanket, adjusting it gently so it covered her arms. The November cold rushed in on him immediately, biting across his shoulders and chest through his thin work shirt, still damp with sweat from the garage. The wind found every gap, every thin spot in the fabric, but he didn't take the jacket back. The woman's pale fingers came up slowly, shakily, and gripped the edge of the jacket like it was something precious, something that made her feel less alone. Marcus reached into his jeans pocket and pulled out his phone. The screen flickered, the battery icon glowing red, 11%. His thumb moved quickly but carefully across the cracked glass, muscle memory guiding him to the numbers he'd never had to dial before. 9-1. The line connected after 2 rings. A woman's voice came through, calm and professional, and somehow distant despite being right in his ear. 911, what's your emergency? Yes ma'am, Marcus said, his voice tight from the cold and something else he couldn't quite name. Fear, maybe, or just the overwhelming awareness of how much was riding on this moment. I'm at the bus stop on Madison Avenue and Harrison Street, the southbound shelter. There's an elderly woman here. She seems confused, disoriented. She's alone and soaked through from the rain. I don't think she knows where she is or how she got here. Is she conscious? Is she breathing normally? Yes ma'am, she's standing, but she's not really responding to me. She seems lost. Okay, I need you to stay with her. Officers are being dispatched to your location right now. Can you do that? Marcus looked across the street at the diner. The orange neon sign buzzed and flickered, casting unsteady light across the wet pavement. He could picture the scene inside so clearly it hurt. The steam rising from the coffee machine, the sharp clatter of dishes, the sound of Bernie's voice cutting through the ambient noise like a blade. His shift had started 3 minutes ago. Yes ma'am, Marcus said quietly. I can stay, thank you. Help should be there in under 10 minutes. The line went dead. Marcus slipped the phone back into his pocket and looked at the old woman beside him. She was still shivering despite the jacket, her pale hands holding the fabric close like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to the world. Marcus sat down on the cold bench beside her, not too close, just near enough that she wouldn't feel alone. His work shirt clung to his back, already soaked through and growing colder by the second. He crossed his arms over his chest, trying to trap what little warmth remained, and waited. The wind howled, the rain pounded. Traffic lights changed from red to green and back again, their reflection wavering in the puddles spreading across the intersection. And Marcus sat, and waited, and tried not to think about what this was costing him. The patrol car arrived exactly 9 minutes later, its lights flashing blue and red across the wet pavement, but its siren mercifully silent. A young officer stepped out from the driver's side, a white woman, probably in her late 20s, with her blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. She moved toward them with deliberate slowness, her hands visible and open, her expression gentle. Evening, she said, her voice pitched low and calm. We got a call about someone needing assistance. Marcus stood, his joints stiff from sitting in the cold, and gestured toward the elderly woman. Yes officer, I found her here about 10 minutes ago. She was trying to sit down but kept losing her balance. She hasn't really spoken or responded to questions. I don't think she knows where she is. The officer nodded and crouched down slowly, bringing herself to eye level with the woman. Ma'am, my name is Officer Brennan. Can you tell me your name? The old woman blinked slowly but didn't answer. Her pale fingers tightened on Marcus's jacket. A second officer, an older black man with gray threading through his close-cropped hair, opened the back door of the cruiser and retrieved a thermal blanket from inside. Officer Brennan spoke gently to the woman, her tone patient and warm despite the cold rain. We're going to help you, okay? We're going to get you somewhere warm and safe. Can you stand up for me? With gentle assistance from both officers, the elderly woman stood. She didn't resist or pull away. She just moved slowly, mechanically, like someone following instructions they didn't fully understand. As they helped her toward the patrol car, she turned her head and looked at Marcus once, her pale blue eyes meeting his dark brown ones for just a heartbeat. There was something in that look, not quite recognition, but maybe awareness. A silent acknowledgement that he had stopped when he didn't have to. Then she was in the car, wrapped in the thermal blanket, and Officer Brennan was walking back toward Marcus. You did good, she said, meeting his eyes. Most people wouldn't have stopped, especially not in weather like this. She glanced down at his soaked shirt, at the way he was shivering now despite trying to hide it. Where's your coat? I gave it to her, Marcus said simply. The officer's expression shifted, surprise, then something like respect. That's your only jacket? Yes ma'am. She reached into the patrol car and pulled out a folded gray sweatshirt. Here, it's not much, but it's dry. Take it. I can't. You can, and you will. That's an order. She pressed it into his hands firmly. What's your name, son? Marcus Williams. Well, Marcus Williams, that woman's family is going to want to thank you. Do you have a phone number where they can reach you? Marcus hesitated, then gave her his number. She wrote it down carefully in a small notebook. Get yourself somewhere warm, Officer Brennan said. And thank you, really. Marcus nodded once, pulled the dry sweatshirt over his head, and turned toward the diner. Then he ran. By the time Marcus burst through the back door of Bernie's diner, his sneakers squelched with every step, his jeans were soaked from mid-thigh down, and his lungs burned from sprinting 8 blocks in the cold rain. He yanked the door open and stumbled into the kitchen, where heat from the grill and fryers slapped him across the face with almost physical force. Bernie stood at the prep station, his thick arms crossed over his barrel chest, his weathered face set in stone. He was a heavy-set white man in his mid-50s, with thinning hair and a permanent scowl that deepened when he was angry, which was most of the time. He looked up as Marcus entered, and his expression didn't change, didn't soften, didn't shift even slightly. You're 23 minutes late. I know, Bernie, I'm sorry, but nope. Bernie threw down the towel he'd been holding with enough force to make it snap against the stainless steel counter. Don't even start. I told you 3 weeks ago, clear as day. One more late clock-in, and we're done. No excuses, no exceptions. There was an old woman, Marcus said, his voice quieter now, trying to catch his breath. At the bus stop. She was confused, lost. I couldn't just leave her in the rain. You think I care? Bernie's voice cut through the kitchen sharp enough to make Teresa, the line cook, turn away from the grill to watch. You think any customer sitting out there cares why you're late? This is a business, kid. I got bills to pay, payroll to make, food costs eating me alive. I can't run a diner with people who don't show up when they're supposed to. Marcus stood there dripping water onto the rubber floor mats, his chest still heaving, his whole body shaking now from a combination of cold, exhaustion, and something harder to name. I just needed to make sure she was safe, Marcus said. The police came. They took her to the hospital, I'm sure. That's real noble. Bernie stepped closer, his voice dropping lower but somehow more cutting. You know what's not noble? Leaving your co-workers short-handed on a Friday night. Making Teresa work twice as hard because you decided to play hero. I wasn't trying to play hero. She needed help, and I need employees who show up on time. Bernie jerked his thumb toward the back door. Out, right now, and don't come by next week, asking about your last paycheck. You forfeited that when you decided someone else's emergency was more important than your job. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Bernie, please, I need that money. My sister's medication. Should have thought about that before you were late for the 3rd time. Bernie turned his back, picking up a cutting board and a knife. We're done here. Leave through the back so you don't upset the customers. Marcus stood frozen for a long moment. The kitchen sounds, sizzling oil, the hum of the industrial refrigerator, the clatter of dishes, washing over him like he was underwater. Teresa caught his eye, and gave him a small sympathetic shake of her head. There was nothing left to say, no argument that would change Bernie's mind, no explanation that would matter. Marcus turned and walked back out into the rain. The door swung shut behind him with a hollow metal sound that echoed in the narrow alley. He stood there for several seconds, water running down his face, rain mixed with something else he refused to acknowledge. The wind wrapped around him, finding its way through even the borrowed police sweatshirt. His whole body shook. The sky above was dark gray, endless, and indifferent. Marcus started walking, not toward home, not yet, just walking, letting his feet carry him through streets he knew by heart, past closed shops and late-night convenience stores, casting sickly yellow light onto wet pavement. He'd lost both jobs in one day. The garage laid him off, the diner fired him. The careful math he'd been doing in his head for months, rent plus utilities, plus food, plus medicine, plus tuition, had just become impossible. The equation no longer balanced. There was no way to make the numbers work. By the time he reached the apartment building where his family lived, the rain had softened to a cold drizzle. The building was a 3-story brick structure that had been built sometime in the 1960s and hadn't been properly maintained since. The downstairs hallway light flickered constantly, casting unsteady shadows across walls painted institutional beige about a decade ago. Marcus climbed the stairs slowly, each step requiring conscious effort. His floor, The third floor was completely dark, except for the weak glow seeping under apartment doors. He slipped his key into the lock as quietly as possible and eased the door open. Not because he didn't want to wake anyone, but because he didn't think he had the energy to face another sound, another question, another problem right now. Inside, the apartment was cold and dim. A single lamp burned in the corner of the small living room, casting weak yellow light across his younger sister's face. Emma sat propped against the threadbare couch, wrapped in their grandmother's old quilt, faded flowers on a blue background, the edges frayed with age and washing. She was 17, a high school senior with dark skin a shade lighter than Marcus's and the same strong features, but right now, she looked small and fragile. Her breathing came heavy and labored, each inhale producing a faint wheeze Marcus could hear from across the room. Her forehead glistened with fever sweat, even though the apartment was cold enough to see your breath in places. Marcus dropped his backpack and rushed over, kneeling beside the couch. He said gently, "Did you take your medicine tonight?" Emma gave the faintest shake of her head. Her throat was clearly too raw and swollen to speak. Her eyes were glassy with fever. Marcus's stomach dropped. He reached for the prescription bottle on the small table beside the couch. Albuterol for the asthma, the expensive kind that actually worked. He picked it up and shook it. 4 pills rattled inside, 4 days of medicine. He'd known that already, but hearing it, feeling the near emptiness of the bottle, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. He glanced toward the kitchen, then remembered with a sinking feeling that he'd knocked over their water pitcher that morning, rushing out the door. He'd meant to refill it at the garage. He'd forgotten. Marcus dug through his backpack, with increasingly frantic movements, until his fingers found a half-crushed plastic bottle. He pulled it out and held it up to the light. Maybe 1/3 full, barely enough. He unscrewed the cap carefully, shook 1 pill into his palm, and placed it and the water bottle into Emma's trembling hands. "It's all we've got for tonight," he said softly, helping her sit up a little straighter. "Try to rest after you take it, okay?" Emma swallowed the pill without complaint, her eyes never leaving his face. She could see it, Marcus knew. She could see that something had gone wrong, but she was too sick to ask, and he was too tired to explain. Marcus grabbed the cleanest washcloth he could find from the kitchen, and dampened it with the last bit of water from their pitcher. He returned to the couch and gently dabbed the sweat from Emma's forehead and neck. Red blotches had spread across her dark cheeks, fever, getting worse despite the medicine. The wind hissed through a crack in the window frame they'd tried to seal with duct tape weeks ago. Marcus stood, crossed the room, and pulled the thin curtain shut with more force than necessary. He moved to the desk shoved against one wall, his workspace, his study area, his entire academic life, crammed into 4 square feet of scratched wood and metal. His phone had been charging since that afternoon, plugged into their one working outlet. He unplugged it and opened his student portal app, dreading what he already knew he'd find. The screen loaded slowly, buffering, then displayed a message in bold red text: "Account hold, unpaid balance." Below that, 2 semesters of unpaid tuition, total balance, $4,700. Below that, if payment is not received within 7 days, your enrollment will be terminated, and you will be withdrawn from all courses. An automated voice began reading the message aloud before Marcus could stop it. "Your student account has been suspended due to..." He jabbed the screen to silence it, his hand shaking. He closed the app and set the phone down carefully, like it might break if he wasn't gentle, like everything in his life might shatter if he moved too quickly. For a long moment, Marcus just sat there at the desk, staring at nothing. His wet clothes clung to his skin, growing colder by the minute. His mind couldn't fully process what had just happened, couldn't connect the dots between helping that woman, and losing his job, and the tuition notice, and Emma's medicine and the rent due in 6 days. Just last week, he'd thought he could make it work. With both paychecks and careful budgeting, and maybe picking up 1 or 2 more shifts, he'd thought he could keep all the pieces in motion. Keep them all in the air just a little longer. Now it felt like everything was crashing down at once, pieces falling too fast to catch. Soft footsteps creaked on the floorboards. Marcus turned to see his little brother standing in the doorway of the bedroom they shared. Caleb was 10 years old, small for his age, with curious eyes that seemed to take in everything and miss nothing. His hair stuck up at odd angles from sleep, and he was rubbing one eye with the back of his hand. But his gaze locked onto Marcus's face, with an awareness that seemed too old, too knowing. "You don't work at Bernie's anymore?" Caleb asked, not angry, not accusing, just a simple question, barely louder than the wind outside. Marcus opened his mouth to answer, but found he couldn't make words come out. His throat had closed up completely, his jaw tight. Caleb stood there for another moment, waiting for a response that didn't come. Then he nodded slowly, turned and padded back to bed without another word. No follow-up question, no "what are we going to do?" No "everything will be okay," just acceptance. That quiet, terrible acceptance. Marcus was alone again. Emma drifted into fevered sleep on the couch, her breathing still rough but steady. Caleb went back to his mattress on the bedroom floor. The apartment settled into silence, except for the wind and the occasional creak of old wood, and the distant sound of traffic on the street below. No one yelled, no one cried, no one blamed him. But that silence, that awful suffocating silence, was somehow worse than any accusation could have been. It pressed down on Marcus's chest like a physical weight, making it hard to breathe. It wasn't harsh words that broke something inside him, it was the emptiness, the absence of anger or disappointment, or even surprise, like they'd all been waiting for this moment, this inevitable collapse, and now that it had arrived, there was nothing left to say. Like his kindness, his choice to help that woman, hadn't just gone unnoticed, but had been swallowed whole by the darkness of their circumstances. Marcus lowered his head onto his folded arms on the desk, his body folded in on itself, as if he could make himself smaller, could disappear into the cold air around him. Everything he'd been holding onto, his jobs, his education, Emma's health, Caleb's future, was slipping away one piece at a time, and he had no idea how to stop it. He sat there in the dark and the cold, until exhaustion finally pulled him under. His last conscious thought, a question he couldn't answer. Did I do the right thing? Morning crept into the apartment slowly, gray light filtering through the thin curtains without bringing any real warmth. Marcus woke with his head still on the desk, his neck cramped and painful, his clothes finally dry, but stiff with dried rain and sweat. He sat up slowly, wincing at the pull in his shoulders and back. The apartment was quiet, except for Emma's labored breathing from the couch, and the tick of the wall clock, marking 6:17 in the morning. Marcus stood carefully, stretched, and moved to check on his sister. Her fever had broken sometime in the night, leaving her skin cool and clammy. She slept deeply now, her breathing easier. He adjusted the quilt around her shoulders and moved to the kitchen. There wasn't much to work with, half a box of generic cereal, no milk, the end of a loaf of bread going stale. He made toast with margarine for Caleb's breakfast and left it on a plate covered with a paper towel. Then he pulled out his one remaining clean shirt, a button-down he saved for job interviews, and changed. He folded what clean clothes remained into a canvas bag, 2 more shirts, an extra pair of jeans, socks with minimal holes, job hunting. That's what today had to be about, finding new work before the rent came due, before Emma's medicine ran out, before the college made good on its threat. He sat down at the desk and pulled his phone off the charger, 38% battery. He opened a job search app and began scrolling through listings, dishwasher needed, overnight warehouse positions, retail associates wanted. He was composing his third application when the phone buzzed in his hand, an incoming call from an unknown local number. Marcus almost didn't answer, probably a spam call, or worse, a bill collector. But something made him swipe to accept. "Hello? Is this Marcus Williams?" A woman's voice, professional but warm.
"Yes, ma'am. Marcus, my name is Patricia Hendricks. I hope I'm not calling too early, but Officer Brennan gave me your number. The woman you helped last night, that was my mother, Dorothy Hendricks." Marcus sat up straighter. "Is she okay? Is she all right?" "She is now, thanks to you." Patricia's voice caught slightly. "Marcus, can I ask you to meet me somewhere this morning? There's something I need to tell you in person. Something I need to give you. Would that be possible?" Marcus glanced around the small apartment. Emma was still sleeping. Caleb wouldn't be up for another half hour. "Yes, ma'am. Where would you like to meet?" "Do you know the Morning Grounds coffee shop on Riverside Avenue?" "Yes, ma'am. Could you be there at 9 o'clock? I'll buy you breakfast." "Please." Marcus hesitated only a moment. "I'll be there. Thank you. And Marcus, thank you for what you did. We'll talk more when I see you." The line went dead.
Marcus sat staring at his phone, his mind spinning. Why would this woman's daughter want to meet him? To thank him formally? To offer a small reward? He pushed the thought away. It didn't matter. What mattered was finding work today. Meanwhile, across the city in a spacious brownstone in the Oak Hill neighborhood where the houses had front porches and the streets had trees, Patricia Hendricks sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open and her phone in her hand. The video had been playing on loop for the past 4 hours. She'd first seen it at 2 in the morning when she couldn't sleep, scrolling through local community Facebook groups, desperate for any information about where her mother might have been before the police found her. A security camera from the corner store across from the bus stop had captured the whole thing. The footage wasn't perfect, shot from an angle, grainy, the rain making everything slightly blurred, but it showed enough. A young black man in work clothes walking with purpose, stopping suddenly, crossing the street, approaching an elderly white woman alone at a bus stop, taking off his jacket and placing it over her shoulders with such gentle care, sitting beside her in the rain, pulling out his phone, waiting. Patricia had watched it 20 times at least. Each time she saw something new: the way he adjusted the jacket to make sure it covered her mother's arms, the careful distance he kept so as not to frighten her, the way he shivered in his thin shirt but never took the jacket back. She'd posted the video at 3 in the morning with a simple caption: "This young man saved my mother's life last night. If anyone knows who he is, please help me find him." By 6 in the morning, the video had been shared 4,000 times. By 7 it was trending locally on 3 different platforms. By 8 the local news had picked it up. Patricia's phone hadn't stopped ringing. Messages flooded her inbox. Reporters wanted interviews. Strangers offered theories about who the young man might be. Then at 7:43, a call came from Officer Brennan. "Mrs. Hendricks, I saw your post. I know who he is. His name is Marcus Williams. I have his number if you'd like to reach out." Now Patricia sat at her table watching the video one more time. This young man who'd stopped when 1,000 others would have walked past. Who'd sacrificed his only coat. Who'd stayed even though anyone could see he was in a hurry. She checked the time. 8:27. She needed to leave soon to make it to the coffee shop. But first she opened her laptop and pulled up the bank account for the Hendricks Foundation, the charitable organization her late husband had established 15 years ago to help young people pursue education. She started typing an email to the foundation's board. The subject line read, "Emergency Scholarship Recommendation, Immediate Consideration Requested." By 8:45, Marcus was walking through downtown, his canvas bag over his shoulder, heading toward Riverside Avenue. The morning was cold but clear, yesterday's rain replaced by sharp wind that cut through his thin jacket, the police sweatshirt Officer Brennan had given him, the only coat he had left. He found Morning Grounds easily, a small cafe with brick walls and large windows, the kind of place college students studied in and business people grabbed coffee before work. Marcus had passed it 100 times but had never been inside. Too expensive. He pushed through the door, a small bell chiming. The interior was warm and smelled richly of coffee and baking bread. A few customers sat scattered at small tables, laptops open, murmuring quietly. A woman stood from a table near the back window and raised her hand in a small wave. She was white, probably in her late 50s, with silver-streaked brown hair pulled back neatly and tired lines around her eyes that suggested she hadn't slept much. She wore professional clothes, slacks and a blouse, but somehow managed to look approachable despite the formal attire. Marcus walked over slowly. She extended her hand immediately. "Marcus, I'm Patricia Hendricks, thank you so much for coming." "Yes ma'am." He shook her hand, his own still rough and stained from garage work. "Please sit. Have you eaten? Let me buy you breakfast. It's the absolute least I can do." Before Marcus could protest, she'd waved over a server and ordered 2 coffees and a full breakfast, eggs, bacon, toast, hash browns, more food than Marcus usually ate in a day. When the server left, Patricia turned to face him fully, her eyes suddenly bright with tears she was clearly trying to hold back. "Marcus, the woman you helped last night, that was my mother Dorothy. She has dementia. It's been getting worse over the past year. She lives in a memory care facility, but somehow she slipped out during a shift change. We didn't even realize she was gone until almost 2 hours later." Marcus listened quietly, his hands folded on the table. By the time we called the police, by the time anyone started looking, she'd been wandering in the rain for nearly 3 hours. Patricia's voice cracked. She was soaked through. Hypothermic. The doctors said if she'd been out there even another hour, especially at her age, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. When the police brought her to the hospital, she was confused, disoriented, but she kept talking about someone. She kept saying kind hands and warm coat. She couldn't remember your face, but she remembered that someone helped her. Marcus nodded slowly. I'm just glad she's okay, that's all that matters. That's not all that matters. Patricia reached into her bag and pulled out a large manila envelope. Marcus, there's a security camera at the corner store across from that bus stop. The owner posted the footage online last night, and I found it. I've been trying to identify you since 3 this morning. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Posted it, people have been sharing it everywhere. The whole city is talking about it. About you. Patricia slid the envelope across the table. I need you to understand something. You didn't just help a confused old woman. You saved my mother's life, and you did it even though anyone watching that video can see you were in a hurry. Even though it cost you something to stop. I was just doing what anyone would do. But that's not true, is it? Patricia's voice was firm but not unkind. Most people wouldn't have stopped. Most people would have assumed someone else would help, or that she'd be fine, or that it wasn't their problem. You stopped. You gave her your only coat. You stayed with her even though you clearly needed to be somewhere. The server arrived with food. Marcus stared at the plate in front of him, more food than his family had in their entire kitchen right now, but couldn't bring himself to pick up the fork. Patricia opened the envelope and pulled out several pieces of paper. Marcus, I need to know something, and I need you to be honest with me. Are you in school? He hesitated, then nodded. Community college. I was. I just got suspended yesterday for unpaid tuition. Are you working? I was. I lost both my jobs yesterday. The words came out flat, matter of fact. I was late to my second shift because I was helping your mother. My boss fired me. Patricia's face shifted through several emotions, shock, anger, something that looked like pain. You lost your job because you stayed to help her. It wasn't the first time I'd been late, he'd warned me. Marcus shrugged, trying to make it seem like less than it was. It's okay, I'll find something else. No, Patricia's voice was suddenly steel. It's not okay, none of this is okay. She pushed the papers across the table. Marcus, my late husband established a charitable foundation 15 years ago. The Hendricks Foundation. We provide educational grants and scholarships to young people who show both academic promise and strength of character. Marcus looked down at the papers but didn't touch them. I've spent the past 3 hours on the phone with our board members, Patricia continued. I've told them about you, about what you did, about what it cost you. We want to offer you a full educational grant. Tuition, books, fees, everything covered for however long it takes you to finish your degree. Marcus's head snapped up. Ma'am, I can't, you can. And there's more. Patricia pulled out another document. We're starting a new community outreach program this spring. We need someone to coordinate it, someone who understands what it means to struggle, someone with compassion and integrity. We'd like to offer you that position. It's part-time while you're in school, 20 hours a week, with a salary sufficient to cover living expenses. Marcus sat frozen, unable to process what he was hearing. It felt like a dream, like something that happened to other people in stories but never in real life. I know this is a lot, Patricia said gently. I know you probably need time to think. But Marcus, I'm serious about this. You saved my mother's life. You sacrificed your job, your education, your financial security. You sacrificed everything to help a stranger. That's the kind of person we want to invest in. Marcus finally picked up the papers with shaking hands. The top document was a grant offer letter. His eyes scanned the text, landing on numbers that seemed impossible. Full tuition coverage, a stipend of $1,000 per month, housing assistance. Why? The word came out barely above a whisper. Why would you do this? Patricia reached across the table and placed her hand gently over his. Because kindness matters. Because compassion matters. Because people like you, people who do the right thing even when it costs them everything, deserve to be supported, not punished.
And because my mother is alive today because you stopped when you didn't have to. Marcus felt his eyes burning, felt his throat closing up. He blinked hard, trying to keep his composure, but a single tear escaped and tracked down his face. I have a sister, he said, his voice rough. She has asthma. We're down to the last 3 days of her medicine, and I don't know how I'm going to pay for more. And my little brother, he's 10, and he's so smart, but our school district is terrible, and I don't know how to give him better. And my rent is due in 6 days, and I don't have it, and I don't know what we're going to do. You're not alone anymore, Patricia said firmly. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You don't have to carry all of this by yourself. We can help. The foundation can help. Let us help you the way you helped my mother. Marcus looked at her, this woman he'd never met until 20 minutes ago, offering him a lifeline he hadn't dared to hope for. He thought about Emma on the couch, struggling to breathe. About Caleb asking if he still had a job, accepting the answer without complaint. About sitting at that desk in the dark, wondering if he'd made the biggest mistake of his life by stopping to help. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Patricia smiled. Just say yes. Marcus took a shaky breath. Yes, yes ma'am. Thank you. No Marcus. Thank you. By noon that same day, Marcus's world had tilted on its axis in ways he couldn't fully comprehend. Patricia had driven him directly to the Foundation's offices, a modest but professional space in a converted historic building downtown. She'd introduced him to staff members whose names blurred together, handed him folders full of paperwork, helped him fill out grant applications and employment forms. We're fast-tracking everything, Patricia explained. Usually this process takes weeks, but given the circumstances, the board has approved expedited consideration. You should have official confirmation by Monday, Tuesday at the latest. She'd written him a check on the spot, a personal loan, she called it, though she made it clear she had no expectation of being repaid. For your sister's medicine and to help with this month's rent. Consider it a bridge until the grant paperwork goes through. Marcus stared at the check. $2,000. More money than he'd ever held at once in his entire life. I'll pay you back, he said. I promise, once I'm working. If you insist on repaying it, donate it to the foundation someday, when you're able, Patricia interrupted gently. Help someone else the way we're helping you. That's how this works. That's how kindness multiplies. By the time Marcus left the foundation offices, at 2 in the afternoon, his canvas bag was heavy with information packets. His pocket held a check that felt impossibly light for what it represented, and his mind was spinning. He stopped at a pharmacy first, and picked up a 30-day supply of Emma's asthma medication. The pharmacist told him the cost, $180, and Marcus didn't even flinch. He had the money. For the first time in months, he had the money. He stopped at a grocery store next, and filled a cart with food. Real food. Fresh vegetables, fruit, bread that wasn't on sale because it was expiring tomorrow, chicken breasts, milk, eggs. At the register the total came to $93.47, and Marcus paid without hesitation. Walking home with bags in both hands, medicine secured safely in his jacket pocket, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in so long he'd almost forgotten what it was: hope. But while Marcus was navigating his personal miracle, the story was taking on a life of its own across the city. The security camera footage had gone genuinely viral. By mid-afternoon, it had been shared over 50,000 times. Local news stations had picked it up. The video played on the 5 o'clock news with the anchor's voice narrating, a moment of pure compassion caught on camera. A young man stops in the rain to help an elderly woman, not knowing their encounter would touch thousands. Comments poured in by the thousands. This is what humanity looks like. He gave her his only coat. In this economy, this young man is a hero. We need more people like this in the world. Someone needs to find him and help him out. You know he's probably struggling if he's walking in the rain without a car. Strangers created a fundraising page. By evening it had raised $12,000 with a simple message, to help the Good Samaritan, who helped Dorothy Hendricks. Let's show him the same kindness he showed her. Local reporters tracked down Officer Brennan, who gave an interview praising Marcus's actions. He stayed with her in the cold rain until we arrived, even though he clearly had somewhere he needed to be. That's character, that's integrity. Bernie from the diner saw the video and recognized Marcus immediately. For a brief moment, sitting in his apartment watching the evening news, Bernie felt something uncomfortable twist in his gut. Regret maybe. Shame. He pushed it away and changed the channel. Tony from the auto shop saw it too. He called Marcus's number 3 times that evening, each call going to voicemail because Marcus's phone had finally died completely and he hadn't had time to charge it. On the 4th try, Tony left a message. Marcus, it's Tony. Listen, I saw the news. That was you, wasn't it? Call me back. I think I made a mistake letting you go. Let's talk. By the time Marcus climbed the stairs to his apartment that evening, the hallway light was still flickering, but somehow it didn't seem quite as depressing as it had that morning. He unlocked the door and pushed it open to find Emma awake on the couch, her breathing noticeably easier, and Caleb at the small kitchen table doing homework. Both of them looked up as he entered with grocery bags in both arms. "What's all that?" Emma asked, her voice still raspy but stronger than last night. Marcus set the bags on the counter and started unpacking. Food. Real food. And this, he pulled the pharmacy bag from his pocket and held it up. 30-day supply of your medicine. We're good for a whole month. Emma's eyes widened. Marcus, how did you get paid? It's a long story. Marcus continued unpacking. Milk in the refrigerator, bread on the counter, fresh apples in the bowl his grandmother had left them. The short version is the woman I helped last night. Her daughter found me. They're going to help me get back into school. And they gave me a job, a real job with actual steady hours and decent pay. What? Emma pushed herself up to sitting. Are you serious? I'm serious. Marcus turned to face his siblings, and for the first time in as long as he could remember, he was smiling. Really smiling. We're going to be okay. I don't know all the details yet, but we're going to be okay. Caleb had been listening quietly, but now he spoke up in his small, serious voice. Because you helped that lady. Yeah, because I helped her. Even though you lost your job. Marcus crossed the small space and knelt down beside his little brother's chair. Listen to me, Caleb. What happened yesterday, losing those jobs, that was hard. Really hard. And for a while there I wasn't sure I'd made the right choice. But here's what I learned. Doing the right thing doesn't always feel good at first. Sometimes it feels like you're losing. But if you keep doing what's right, even when it costs you something, eventually the world has a way of balancing things out. So we should always be kind. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, Marcus said. That's when it matters most. Emma wiped at her eyes. You're going to make me cry, and I just stopped coughing. Marcus stood and went back to unpacking groceries. Well, don't cry yet. I'm making actual dinner tonight. Real food. We're celebrating. As Marcus cooked, chicken and rice and vegetables, nothing fancy but worlds better than their usual meals, he told them the whole story. Meeting Patricia, the foundation, the grant, the job offer, the check that was going to cover rent and medicine, and buy them a little breathing room for the first time in years. They ate together at the small table, all 3 of them. And for one evening, the apartment felt less like a place they were barely surviving in, and more like a home. Winter gave way to early spring with surprising gentleness. By March, Marcus had settled into a new rhythm that still sometimes felt like a dream he might wake up from. He was back in classes at community college, his tuition and fees covered completely by the Hendricks grant. His grades had improved dramatically now that he wasn't juggling multiple jobs. Wasn't staying up until 2 in the morning trying to study, wasn't choosing between textbooks and medicine. The position at the Hendricks Foundation had turned out to be perfect for him. 20 hours a week coordinating their new youth outreach program, working with high school students from low-income backgrounds, helping them navigate college applications and scholarship opportunities. He was good at it, better than he'd expected, because he understood what they were going through. He could look at a tired teenager working 2 jobs and see himself. Could look at a student whose family didn't understand why college mattered and remember having those same conversations with his own grandmother before she passed. On a Tuesday morning in mid-March, Marcus sat in the foundation's small conference room with Patricia and 2 other board members, reviewing applications for their spring scholarship cycle. This one, Patricia said, sliding a folder across the table toward Marcus. Sarah Mitchell, single mother, working full-time while taking classes at night. What do you think? Marcus read through the application carefully. Strong grades despite the circumstances. A heartfelt essay about wanting to become a social worker to help other families like hers. Letters of recommendation that praised her determination and character. I think she's exactly the kind of person we should be supporting, Marcus said. But I'd like to talk to her first if that's okay. Make sure she understands what resources are available beyond just the scholarship money. Child care assistance, emergency funds, that kind of thing. Patricia smiled. That's why you're so good at this. You think beyond the immediate need. You see the whole picture. After the meeting, Marcus headed to campus for his afternoon classes. As he walked through the quad, several students greeted him by name. He'd become somewhat of a known figure on campus after his story had spread. Not famous exactly, but recognized. The guy who'd helped that old woman in the rain. The guy whose kindness had gone viral. At first the attention had been uncomfortable, strangers wanting to shake his hand, tell him he was inspiring, take selfies with him. He'd hated it, had wanted to be anonymous again. But Patricia had given him advice that shifted his perspective. Use the attention to help others. Every time someone wants to talk to you about what you did, tell them about the foundation. Tell them about students who need support. Turn your story into a bridge that helps other people. So that's what Marcus did. He'd given 3 talks at local high schools about the importance of community service. He'd done an interview with the campus newspaper where he talked less about himself and more about the scholarship opportunities available. He'd used his moment in the spotlight to shine light on others. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from Emma. Got accepted to the nursing program. They're giving me a partial scholarship. Marcus stopped walking right there in the middle of the quad, and broke into a huge smile. Emma was going to college. His little sister who'd been so sick just 3 months ago, was going to become a nurse. He called her immediately. Em, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you, she said, and he could hear that she was crying happy tears. You know that, right? Everything you did to keep us going, all those years, you did the work, Marcus interrupted firmly. You earned this. I'm just glad I could help clear the path a little. After he hung up, Marcus stood for a moment in the spring sunshine, feeling the warmth on his face and thought about how much had changed since that rainy November night. Emma was healthy and headed to college. Caleb was thriving in a new after-school program Marcus had connected him to, already talking about becoming a teacher. They'd moved to a better apartment in a safer neighborhood, nothing fancy, but warm and dry and secure. And Marcus himself was becoming the person he'd always wanted to be. Not just surviving anymore, but actually building something. Not just getting by, but helping others get ahead. On a warm Saturday in late April, the Riverside Community Center, the same center where Marcus now worked part-time, hosted a celebration for community volunteers and scholarship recipients. The large hall was packed with people. Students, parents, neighbors, volunteers who'd given their time and effort to make the neighborhood stronger. Tables lined with donated food stretched across one wall. A small stage had been set up at the front. Marcus stood near the back, uncomfortable in the button-down shirt and tie Patricia had convinced him to wear. He wasn't supposed to speak today, thank God, but Patricia had insisted he attend. The event started with the center's director giving a warm welcome, followed by several community leaders discussing the importance of supporting young people. Then Patricia stepped to the microphone. I want to tell you a story, she began, and Marcus felt his stomach drop because he knew exactly which story she was about to tell. Last November on a cold, rainy night, my mother wandered away from her care facility. She has dementia, and in her confusion she'd gotten lost. The room quieted, people leaning forward to listen. A young man was walking to his second job that night. He was already late. He'd just been laid off from his first job. He was struggling to pay rent, to afford his sister's medicine, to stay in school. He had every reason to keep walking, to assume someone else would help, to prioritize his own urgent needs. Patricia paused, her voice thick with emotion, but he stopped. He gave my mother his only coat. He stayed with her in the freezing rain until help arrived. And because of that choice, Because of his compassion, my mother is alive today. She turned and looked directly at Marcus. Marcus Williams, could you please come up here? Every head in the room turned to find him. Marcus felt his face grow hot, but he couldn't refuse. He made his way through the crowd to the stage, his heart pounding. Patricia handed him the microphone, and suddenly Marcus was looking out at 200 faces staring back at him expectantly. He'd never been good at public speaking, had never wanted to be the center of attention, but he thought about what Patricia had told him. Use your story to help others. I'm not really sure what to say, Marcus began, his voice uncertain. What Patricia described that night in the rain. I didn't do it because I wanted recognition, or because I thought it would lead to anything like this. I couldn't walk past someone who needed help.
He paused, gathering his thoughts. But here's what I learned from that experience. Sometimes doing the right thing feels like the hardest thing. It feels like you're sacrificing too much, like you're going to lose everything. That night, I did lose my job. I thought I'd made a terrible mistake. His eyes scanned the room, young people he recognized from the Foundation's programs, teenagers who looked just like he had, tired, worried, carrying too much. But what I understand now is that compassion isn't a transaction. It's not about doing good so good will come back to you. It's about choosing to be human even when the world makes it hard. It's about seeing someone else's struggle and deciding it matters, even when you're struggling too. His voice grew stronger. A lot of people have called me a hero for what I did. I'm not a hero, I'm just someone who stopped. And if there's anything I want you to take from my story, it's this: we all have the power to stop. To look at someone else's pain and decide we're going to do something about it, even if it's small, even if it costs us something. He looked directly at a young black girl in the third row who couldn't have been more than 14, her eyes wide and attentive. You don't have to wait until you have money or power or security to make a difference. You just have to care. You just have to choose compassion over convenience. And when you do that, when you keep doing that even when it's hard, you build something bigger than yourself. You build community. You build hope. The room was silent, deeply emotionally silent. Marcus saw tears on several faces. The Hendricks Foundation gave me a second chance. They invested in me when I had nothing to offer except the fact that I tried to do the right thing. And now my job, my privilege is to pass that forward. To find other young people who are struggling and say you matter, your dreams matter, your compassion matters. Let us help you the way someone helped me. He handed the microphone back to Patricia. The applause that followed was thunderous. Patricia hugged him tightly. That was perfect, she whispered. After the program ended, Marcus spent nearly an hour speaking with attendees, students, parents, volunteers. He was talking to a high school senior about college applications when someone tapped his shoulder. He turned to see a young woman, light brown hair in a ponytail, maybe 19 or 20, nervous energy radiating from her. Marcus, I'm sorry to interrupt. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I wanted to thank you. Marcus recognized the name immediately. Sarah, hey. I'm glad you could make it today. Did you get our email about the scholarship? I did. Her voice broke. I almost didn't apply, but then I read about you, and I thought maybe, just maybe, there was hope for someone like me. There is, Marcus said firmly. She told him about her 3-year-old son, her struggles, her fear, her relief. Marcus reassured her, promised support, and when she hugged him, he felt her gratitude like a physical weight. This, he realized, was his purpose. On a quiet Tuesday afternoon, Marcus was at his desk reviewing a scholarship application when Patricia appeared in the doorway. Marcus, do you have a minute? Someone's here to speak with you. Sure. Who is it? Patricia stepped aside, and a large white man in his mid-50s entered. He wore jeans and a work shirt with Bernie embroidered on the chest. Marcus froze. Bernie, from the diner. The man who had fired him without listening. The man who refused to pay him his last wages. The man whose words, "Don't bother coming back," had followed Marcus through months of fear. Hey, Marcus, Bernie said quietly. His gruff voice was softer than Marcus remembered, almost hesitant. Hope I'm not interrupting anything. Marcus stood slowly. Bernie, what are you doing here? Bernie shifted awkwardly, hands fidgeting. I tried calling, couldn't find the right number. So, here I am. Patricia stepped out, closing the door gently behind her. Have a seat, Marcus said. Bernie sat, looking strangely small in the chair despite his size. I saw the news, Bernie began. Back in November, the video, the story about what you did for that woman, he swallowed. And I felt like absolute crap, hell worse than crap, because that same night, when you were out there helping someone in the cold, I fired you without giving you a chance to explain. I didn't listen, I didn't even try. Marcus said nothing. I was stressed, short-staffed, business was bad, but none of that excuses how I handled things. I treated you like you were disposable, and when I said you'd forfeited your last paycheck. He stopped, shaking his head. I've regretted that every day since. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. I talked to my accountant, calculated what I owed you. Not just the last paycheck, everything I should have paid you fairly, with interest. He slid the envelope across the desk. Inside was a check for $2,800 and a handwritten note, what I owed you, and an apology I should have given months ago. Bernie, Marcus, I'm sorry, Bernie said, voice cracking. Truly, Marcus exhaled slowly. Bernie cleared his throat. One more thing, business is picking up again, and I'd like to offer you your job back, part-time, flexible hours, better pay. You can say no. Hell, I wouldn't blame you, but if you want the work, the job's yours. Marcus stared at him, stunned. I'll think about it, he said finally. Bernie nodded. Relief washed over his face. I'm proud of you, kid. What you're doing here, it matters. You turned something awful into something good. Most people don't do that. By late spring, Marcus had settled into a new rhythm that felt sustainable rather than punishing. Classes 4 mornings a week, the foundation work 3 afternoons a week, the auto shop 2 evenings and Saturday mornings. It was still a lot, but it was balanced. He wasn't sacrificing sleep or health or family time anymore. He was building something. Emma had started her nursing program and was excelling. She'd found a study group of other students from challenging backgrounds, and they supported each other through the demanding coursework. She came home exhausted but happy, talking animatedly about anatomy and patient care, and the kind of nurse she wanted to become. Caleb was flourishing in middle school. His grades had improved dramatically with the stability of their new apartment and regular meals. He joined the robotics club and talked constantly about programming and engineering. Marcus had already started researching scholarship opportunities for him, planning years in advance. On a Saturday evening in early May, the foundation hosted a dinner for their scholarship recipients, current and former students, all gathered to celebrate their achievements and support each other. Marcus arrived early to help set up arranging chairs and setting out name tags. The event was being held at a nice restaurant that had donated the space, far fancier than anywhere Marcus had ever eaten before his life changed. As recipients began arriving, Marcus greeted each one personally. He knew most of them by now, had interviewed them, reviewed their applications, checked in on their progress throughout the semester. Sarah Mitchell arrived with her young son in tow, the little boy's hand clutched tightly in hers. She looked different than the last time Marcus had seen her, still tired, still clearly carrying a heavy load, but standing a little straighter, more confident. Marcus, she called out when she spotted him. This is my son James. James, can you say hi to Mr. Marcus? The small boy, barely 3 years old, looked up at Marcus with huge eyes and gave a shy wave. Hey James, Marcus said gently, crouching down to the child's level. Your mom tells me you like trucks. Is that true? The boy nodded enthusiastically. Sarah smiled. I wanted you to meet him. Wanted him to see that there are good people in the world who help others. I tell him about you sometimes, about how you helped people, and then people helped you. I want him to grow up knowing that's how the world should work. Marcus felt his throat tighten. How are you doing? How's the semester going? I'm passing everything, Sarah said, pride evident in her voice. It's still hard, but having that scholarship money, not having to worry about tuition, it's changed everything. I can focus on my classes instead of constantly scrambling for hours at work. I can spend time with James without feeling guilty that I'm not studying or working. You gave me that. The foundation gave me that. You earned it, Marcus reminded her. We just removed some barriers. You're doing the work. The dinner was beautiful, far more formal and organized than Marcus had expected. Patricia gave a speech about the foundation's mission and impact. Several scholarship recipients shared their stories. Then unexpectedly, Patricia called Marcus to the front. I didn't prepare anything, he protested as he stood. Then speak from the heart, Patricia said.
That's what you do best. Marcus found himself in front of the room once again, looking out at dozens of faces. But this time was different. These weren't strangers. These were people he knew, people he'd helped, people who understood struggle and perseverance and hope. When I was invited to speak tonight, Marcus began, I thought about what I could say that would be meaningful, what wisdom I could share, but then I realized I don't have wisdom. I'm 22 years old, most of you are my age or older, we're all figuring this out together. He paused, finding his rhythm. But I can tell you what I've learned this year. I learned that kindness isn't weakness, that choosing compassion, even when it costs you something, is always worth it. I learned that asking for help isn't failure, it's courage. And I learned that we're not meant to do this alone. He gestured around the room. Every person in this room has a story, a struggle, a dream that felt impossible until someone said, "Let me help." That's what community means. That's what the foundation represents. Not charity, but investment. Not pity, but recognition that everyone deserves a chance to build something better. His eyes found Sarah and her son. I met someone recently who told me she wanted her child to grow up knowing that helping others is how the world should work. And I think she's right. But it's not how the world automatically works, it's how we have to make it work. Every day, in small ways and big ways, by stopping when someone needs help, by supporting each other's dreams, by refusing to accept that struggle is inevitable, or that some people matter less than others. Marcus's voice grew stronger, more passionate. 6 months ago, I thought I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. I'd lost my jobs, my tuition was due, I couldn't afford my sister's medicine. I thought helping that woman in the rain had cost me everything. But what I understand now is that it didn't cost me anything. It gave me everything. It connected me to this community. It showed me that kindness multiplies. It proved that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, even when the immediate consequences are painful, eventually leads somewhere good. He looked around the room at faces reflecting back his own journey. Struggle, hope, determination, gratitude. So here's what I want to say to everyone in this room. You matter. Your struggles don't define you, but your choices do. Choose kindness. Choose to help the next person the way someone helped you. Choose to be part of making the world work the way it should, instead of accepting it as it is. And know that you're not alone. You're part of something bigger now. You're part of a community that believes in you. The room erupted in applause. People stood, some wiped tears. Marcus felt Patricia's proud hand on his shoulder as he returned to his seat. After dinner, as people mingled, Marcus stood near a window looking out at the city lights. Dorothy Hendricks, Patricia's mother, approached in her wheelchair. Her memory had continued to decline, but today was a good day. Mother wanted to come tonight, Patricia said softly. Marcus knelt beside her. Hello, Mrs. Hendricks, it's good to see you. Dorothy looked at him for a long moment, her weathered hand lifting to touch his face. Kind hands, she whispered. I remember kind hands. Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. I'm glad I could help you that night, ma'am. Safe now, Dorothy said, because someone stopped. After everyone had left and Marcus walked home through the warm May night, he thought about how much had changed since November. How one choice, one moment of stopping, had set off a chain reaction he could never have predicted. He still struggled sometimes, still stayed up too late studying, still worried, but he wasn't drowning anymore. He was building. His phone buzzed. Emma just aced my pharmacology exam. Celebrating with ice cream. Want some? Marcus smiled. On my way. As he walked, he realized something profound. The light hadn't spread because he helped one woman. It spread because that help created a system, an engine for kindness. Every person helped would help someone else. Every scholarship given would someday become someone else's hand up. The ripples kept spreading outward, touching lives he'd never meet. And that was how the world changed. Marcus stood on the stage at community college graduation, his cap and gown a little too big, his associate's degree earned with a 3.9 GPA. Emma and Caleb cheered the loudest. Patricia and Dorothy sat beside them, and nearby sat Bernie from the diner, face soft with pride. Along with a dozen scholarship recipients Marcus had mentored, he'd been accepted to a 4-year university on a full scholarship, planning to major in social work. The foundation offered him a permanent position as program director. But more than those achievements, he felt pride in the 30-plus students he'd helped lift up. Sarah Mitchell was weeks from graduating and had already accepted a job in social work. A new community center was being built in his neighborhood. Caleb was thriving and planning his own future. The rain had fallen on a cold November night, and Marcus had stopped. That single choice had changed everything. As he walked across the stage, he saw Patricia crying, smiling, proud. Dorothy clapped, her memory holding on to something deeper than details, kindness, and Marcus finally understood the lesson. Stop for each other, help even when it costs you. Believe that compassion matters, build communities that catch people when they fall and lift them until they rise. The rain may fall, but we can be the shelter. The night may darken, but we can be the light. Always we can choose to stop, to see, to help. And in doing so we save not just others, but ourselves.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.